Of course, Guantanamo is not closed. Does the CIA still torture? That's an interesting question. When I was in Mogadishu, Somalia, a few months ago, I flew into the airport in Mogadishu, which in and of itself is a surreal experience. We land at Adenade Airport in Mogadishu, and we see this huge pink, it's not code pink, but pink structure. And it looked like a forward operating base, like I had seen in Afghanistan and elsewhere. And so once we get out of the airport and go to where we're staying and start interviewing people, I was interviewing Somali intelligence officials that liaise with the CIA, and I said, what's that building at the airport? And they go, oh, that's the CIA base. We call it Guantanamo. Guantanamo, by the way, has become a term for a lot of things in a lot of countries around the world that have anything to do with the US, which gives you a clear sense of how Guantanamo is still viewed around the world. But in any case, here in full view is a CIA base, and it was later confirmed to me by the CIA that that is in fact what it was. So I give the Obama administration credit for at least having someone who answers the phone at Langley to be honest, for a change. So they have this CIA base there where the US is training a targeted kill capture team in Somalia, and they're paying Somali agents $200 a month, and they're building up this operation to try to target Al-Shabaab, which is a militant Somali movement that has pledged its allegiance to Al-Qaeda. But what I also learned when I was in Somalia, so you have these same policies happening under Obama, using proxy forces, using drones, having targeted kill team, putting people on the US payroll in cash in another country to go bump someone off. This is still happening. We have to be very clear in talking about what this is. But I also met a journalist in Mogadishu who told me that he had been put in a national security prison recently for taking pictures of one of those operations. And he said it's in the basement of Somalia's national security agency, and there are Americans in this basement. And they interrogate prisoners. And there are people from around the world that have been brought to this prison in Mogadishu. And so then I found another person who'd been in the prison. And then I got in touch with lawyers from Reprieve and investigators from Reprieve. And they said, well, we have a case of this guy in Kenya who had been abducted in Eastleigh, the Somali section of Nairobi, and was taken to the airport and then flown to Somalia, and he was put in that prison and he was interrogated by Americans and other white men. So we started working on this case, and when I inquired with the US government, they confirmed that this individual had indeed been snatched off the streets of Nairobi, Kenya. Obama was the president at the time, at the urging of the United States government. And they said that it's a good thing that he's been taken out of circulation. So it's not necessarily that President Obama has the CIA going and snatching these people, but they're telling someone else's government that is a client state of the United States, you go snatch those people, and then you take them to a third country, and you stick them in that prison, and then we'll have access to the prisoners that we want to question when we want to question them. The prison in the basement of Somalia's National Security Agency, the staff there is entirely funded by the United States. It's in blatant violation of the Leahy Amendment, blatant violation of basic principles of law in the United States that say that the United States cannot give military or other assistance to human rights abusing forces. These are forces that are regularly abusing human rights, and they're keeping prisoners 24 hours a day in a bed-bug-infested secret prison in the basement of the US-funded Somali National Security Agency. So how much change do you believe in when all we have is a more sophisticated, complicated series of hoops that they have to jump to do the exact same things that Bush was doing in a more streamlined fashion when it comes to CIA, interrogation, torture, and secret prisons. The CIA was very concerned that I not call it a black site. They called repeatedly. Some right-wing dingbat online was challenging me about it, that you're making up this base, and I tweeted back at him, I'm going to put a picture up of the base. You have a picture, a video of it. Within 30 seconds of me tweeting to this dingbat, CIA calls me. And they were very concerned that I was going to put this picture up. And to be honest, I was just being kind of macho myself toward that guy. I was like, yeah, I'll put a picture. I wasn't really going to put a picture up because it would have served no purpose. I mean, you can fly into Mogadishu and see it. It's a pink building, for Christ's sake. So, but the point is here that we hear a lot of rhetoric about change, and we hear a lot of people who seem to have this sort of surreal faith that somehow Obama knows what he's doing, that the secret plan for liberty when it comes to US national security policy is going to somehow be revealed. And I mean, we need to disavow ourselves of any notion that this policy is markedly different than that of Bush and Cheney, because it's not. It's the same problem. The journalist that I told you about, who helped to reveal the civilian deaths at Al-Majala in that Tomahawk strike that President Obama authorized in December of 2009, Abdullah al-Haider Shaya. He's in prison right now in Yemen. And the reason he's in prison is that Yemeni security forces arrested him. First they abducted him one night, they beat him, and then they threw him back out on the street, telling him to stop talking about those issues. He went straight to Al Jazeera and went on TV and said, I was just arrested and beaten and threatened, and they told me not to talk about these issues. So then they re-arrest him again. They do a night raid on his home, they snatch him, and they hold him incommunicado in a US-funded prison for 1 month, with no charges against him whatsoever. 30 days later, he's hauled in front of a special tribunal in Sana'a that was set up explicitly to prosecute journalists who insulted the regime of Ali Abdullah Saleh. And they use this court as a kind of intimidation method against journalists. They'll sentence them to many years, but then they hold them for a few months and release them. So when they arrest this very famous Yemeni journalist who worked for ABC News, The Washington Post, Al Jazeera, CNN used his videos because he had interviewed Anwar al-Awlaki. All these outlets are silent on the fact that this man's in prison. So he gets put in this prison. Tribal leaders and others go and they try to mediate his release. And they meet with Ali Abdullah Saleh in early 2010. And they say to Saleh, you have to release him. You know that these charges are bogus. You know that he's not Al-Qaeda. You know that he's not a spokesperson for Al-Qaeda. You know that you introduced fabricated evidence in his trial, trying to link him to Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Let the guy out. And this is how a lot of business gets done in Yemen. The tribes come and they tell the president what's what, and maybe it happens and maybe it doesn't. So they go and meet with him, and Saleh is going to pardon him. The pardon was actually drawn up, and he has it on his desk to sign. And it leaks into the official news agency in Yemen that Ali Abdullah Saleh is going to pardon Abdullah al-Haider Shaya. Ali Abdullah Saleh's phone rings. Call from Washington. Not John Brennan, not Hillary Clinton, not David Petraeus, his old conspiracy buddy about bombs ours, not yours. President Obama himself calls Ali Abdullah Saleh, the dictator of Yemen, and says the United States is concerned about reports that you plan to release Abdullah al-Haider Shaya, who was convicted of being a member of Al-Qaeda in your courts. Saleh rips up the pardon, and he remains in prison to this day because of one phone call from President Obama. So the war against journalists in this country and whistleblowers in this country is not just in this country. The U.S. is waging a war against journalists in other countries who have the audacity to go and expose one of our war crimes where civilians were killed. We will go so far as to demand the continued imprisonment of journalists abroad, while also waging a war against journalists at home. There's a special guest in the room who's been here all day, and you probably wouldn't even know it, but Abdullah al-Haider Shaya's lawyer is here. Abdurrahman Barman is here. If you could. We met in Sana'a, Yemen, a few months ago, and I wanted to meet him because he's actually a pretty famous lawyer in Yemen and has done some of the best human rights law work there. And he comes to meet me and he's wearing a leather jacket and he's kind of out of breath, and we meet in a cafe and he says, "I'm sorry I had to meet here, but our office was just shelled by the Republican Guard, by the US-backed forces in Yemen. They destroyed the office of HUD, the human rights law organization that Abdurrahman works with. And he's been doing great work, a lot of it involving standing up against these US-backed counterterrorism units and blowing on the whistle on it, and has been detained himself for doing so. And I'm really honored that you're here today, Abdurrahman. So we have a reality now in this country where a president who was viewed by so many as this transformative figure that was going to radically change the way that the U.S. Conducted its foreign policy around the world, was going to radically was going to repair the damage that had been done to the U.S. reputation around the world. If you look at the premier hallmarks that define the Bush-Cheney national security policy, all of them have been continued or intensified under President Obama.
That's right.